Some schools of Buddhism believe the Buddha was superhuman, a magical figure who consorted with gods and performed miracles. Others that he was no more than a human being, and they believe it is this that adds power to his message.
There's no doubt that the Buddha wished to be remembered as a human being, with human frailties, not perhaps frailties of the intellect or moral frailties, but certainly physical frailties. The Buddha suffers from back pain, for example. Towards the end of his life, he suffers from various physical complaints and weaknesses.
The Buddha would die at the age of 80 from a common illness, food poisoning. It is said that before passing away, he fell into a deep trance on his journey from this world to nirvana, a state of eternal bliss, free at last from rebirth, free at last from suffering and death. A council was assembled to record for posterity the Buddha's teachings. These were learnt by heart and handed down the centuries by generations of monks. The Buddha's body was cremated and his remains were preserved. They were enshrined 200 years later by India's first emperor king, Ashoka, who converted to Buddhism. He built vast monuments or stupas and erected pillars to mark the key sites of the Buddha's life.
Ashoka then becomes absolutely a key figure, both in terms of the actual spread of Buddhism, but then also as a model for future Buddhist leaders throughout Asia. They look back to Ashoka as the kind of ideal king and supporter of Buddhism.
So far as we know, the Emperor Ashoka, who ruled over 2/3 of modern India in the middle of the 3rd century BC, helped monks to send out missions to countries bordering India. Missionaries were sent up into Kashmir, to Nepal, and certainly to Sri Lanka. They converted the king gave his patronage to Buddhism, and Sri Lanka has therefore been a Buddhist country from that day to this. And in country after country, we know over many centuries that this is the way that Buddhism was successfully implanted.
Ashoka's pillars outlived Buddhism in India. They withstood Muslim invasions and survived to catch the attention of the first colonial archaeologists.
This gave a very significant impetus to the revival of Buddhism and the desire to go back to the places associated with the Buddha, imagining Buddhism for people in the West. But these investigations also become the basis for a revival within Buddhism in Asia.
Today, the sites associated with the Buddha's life attract tourists, and pilgrims flock to Bodh Gaya to follow in the Buddha's footsteps, hoping to find, as he did, eternal peace and happiness, and a cure for suffering and death.
It's a great irony that after the Buddha's death, the person who had preached on the uselessness of ritual and also really the uselessness of a personality cult became the object of ritual worship and as big a personality cult as has ever existed in history.
Buddhist temples have been built in Bodh Gaya, representing the different traditions from around the world. Buddhism, in all its forms, has come home to the Bodhi tree, to the place where once a prince reached enlightenment and became the Buddha.
The Buddha attained enlightenment on that fleeting moment of a wink. This moment, fleeting moment, is the time that takes to realize, and that moment cannot be explained.
That special moment gave birth to the first world religion, a religion without a god, where the path to nirvana lies in the mind of each and every one of us.